Good morning, class. We're going to go over chapter 4 today. As you can see, I'm a little bit of a different setting. I'm actually in what could be described as a green screen mode, but sometimes it doesn't look that way. There was supposed to be a screen behind me that I could teach, but as you can see, technical difficulties um, precluded me from doing that. I know it might seem like a little bit of a slow going to most of you, but trust me, it will work. It will work. I know it seems like it's a little bit off now, but it'll work. It's just I have to put the tools down, and then you'll have it come together. The case studies will have it come together, and the case studies will have you looking totally different at this. When it's all done. Risk management. Here's the thing. Risk is the harm and hazards caused by the level and magnitude of exposure to said harm. They even have an equation for it. I mean, not to get math on you, but that's what the equation is. Risk equals hazard time exposure. This is used a lot, especially down south in places like Louisiana, New Orleans specifically, because New Orleans is really in a fishbowl, and any kind of rain could flood the whole entire city. So stuff like this is used. And then you have the nature of your risk defined by three principles: the threat of it, the vulnerability, and the consequence. GHS even has a rating or a formula with their own with this. And by geography, there are certain things that you are very, I guess the word is you're very used to having happen around you. If you lived out in Tornado Alley, like we were talking about in class, you have tornadoes. If you live in out west, it's fires. If you live down south, it's flooding and tornadoes and those type of things. And up in the Northeast, we're mainly controlled by weather, and that's pretty much what we are controlled by is weather. Risk assessment, three factors that must be addressed in assessing any risk. Analytic, and it must address all three factors. Deliberative, necessary because the notion of a cold actuarial terrorism risk assessment is unrealistic. You have to understand when you talk about a terrorist attack, and like I explained to you in class, a terrorist attack can come from almost anywhere. It could come from within your country. It can come from the outside of your country. You don't have to to look too far to have hate. You don't have to look up. You can look right here in your own country. And I think that's the thing we don't really understand as much. Okay, and it's got to be practical. The data and the management requirements must be technically and economically feasible. I got to put this in a good way because I don't want you to think that I'm insensitive. But you can't go broke um, trying to prevent something that may or may not be there. You can mitigate it so it's not as horrific, but going broke, preventing something that's not there won't happen. Perfect example, you won't have another 9/11 because now we know, okay, planes, flying planes, they didn't want to learn how to land them. They just want to learn how to fly them and turn them. That's the kind of thing you mitigate, okay? Those type of things. And like I said before, in class, this is more of an out of the box kind of thinking thing. You got to think out of the box. And you almost got to put yourself in the mind of a terrorist. It's a little tough because most of you were never raised that way to be diabolical and those type of things. You got to remember for a terrorist, as much as we like living, they don't mind dying. So it's a little bit different. And there we go. There's the geography I was talking about earlier. Um, there's a lot of things asset based. Those things that cost a lot of money. Yeah, I know things geography wise they cost a lot of money too, but those are the things that a specific target and basically what it means. Okay, the vulnerability, the consequences. Let's go with the geography. Threats are linked to a certain geography. I already told you that because you have areas that, let's say, a hurricane, tornado. Let's go tornado, tornado alley. Okay, the vulnerability, the intrinsic vulnerabilities of an area is based on their geography. Period. The broader the consequences, the broader the consequences in the area, population, or economy resulting. You can have tornadoes coming through a certain area. Years ago, a tornado went through, I want to say, Mississippi and wiped out the whole town. But most of the town was insured. Town came back. It took a few years. But once again, geography. Now we know that's going to happen. Perfect example, another one, fires out west. They realize that these people are going to be rebuilding. Could this happen in another 5, 10 years? Absolutely. But once again, those are the things that you have to prepare for and do. Maybe you build your house a little bit differently. Maybe you have something out in front of the house that, like a moat barrier, that could potentially slow down a fire. Okay, an assets-based risk analysis, the adversary's intent to attack a specific target. Absolutely. The vulnerability, once again, we were talking about soft targets. Those targets you need very little planning and time to penetrate. Those targets that are just there. And like I told you before, many of you don't walk into a Walmart and say, man, look at these people. They're not paying attention. They're really soft targets. You don't think like that. You're not supposed to think like that. Okay. And then the consequences. And I know I said it before, but if you're a terrorist, you want to kill wholesale. You don't want to kill retail. Okay. Bigger bang for your buck. I know that doesn't sound good, but that's the way they want to go with this. As you can see, the 4 steps in the process of mitigation. I don't know why the top one, but the very top one says you got to organize your resources, access the risk, develop a mitigation plan, and implement the plan and monitor progress. From the start, communities should focus on the resources needed for successful mitigation planning. In other words, let's take the place that had the horrific tornado, really wiped out the whole town. They actually had to go back in and say, okay, if this happens again, what are the sources we have? Okay, we might have the school, it might be a shelter. We also have the Red Cross in town, we have the Salvation Army, we have churches. So now what you have is that intersection of governmental agencies and private agencies coming together for one common cause and one common good, and that happens. And then you assess the risk. What happens? What do we need if this happens again? We learned from it before, but what did we really learn? And now we move on, and now we go forward. Another part of your case study that's going to come out, and there'll be a video about your case study as well. And you develop the plan. And once you develop a plan, you got to implement it. Plans are only good if A, they're cogent, B, succinct and to the point, and C, you know your resources. You're only as good as your plan, and that's what it really comes down to in that. Actually, there's a assessment tool. There it is, called Carver, and we'll be doing a little bit of that. The criticality, accessibility, reculpability, vulnerability, effect, and recognizability. Those are the things that when you go into a situation, you can actually go and figure it out right away. Perfect example: if you have a hurricane or a tornado and a pandemic, which we have right now, there are things that you have to do that figure out the pandemic and make it a little bit better. Okay, pandemic shelter. Let's go. Who are the people coming into the shelter? Who are the people that might need shelter? Within this 10 to 15 block range, there might be, I don't know, 1,000 people. Will we have 1,000 people at this one? Okay, well, this will be the max number for this one. They won't send them across town. Those type of things. And by the way, it can't be something that can be done within 5 or 10 minutes. It's a long process. And there we go. Okay, there's some certain points that you get, and the higher the points, then the more shock and really the higher the number, the more debilitating the action will be. Now we went over this in class. Natural hazards are those things that happen through nature. Things you can't control: hurricane, tornado, floods, winter storms, especially here in the Northeast. I think it was 2010 or 2011. I thought we had a snow like every other week. I mean, I had to put my classes online because I'm like, this might not work, and those type of things. Tornadoes, floods, heat related emergency, droughts. People underestimate droughts because really they don't see the impact of something happening, but something is happening, and you're just not knowing it. Droughts affect food and the chain. There's a chain that happens, and when it affects the food, then we can go from there. Wildfires, thunderstorms, and geological events. Earthquakes, not as rare. I mean, not rare on in Jersey or on the East Coast. They happen. A couple weeks ago, there was one that happened up north. Okay, so it's very possible. Um, Wait, there we go. Natural threats. Now, when I talk about threats, you have threats to your homeland that get a natural, man-made. We'll be getting to that, but you also have threats that happen just because of what or where you are and how things happen: crime, terrorism, unintentional events. Now, I got to be careful when I say this. An unintentional event would be a protest turned violent. Unattended or unintentional event because it actually stemmed out of something that was supposed to be peaceful. I'm walking a thin rope on that one, and I don't want to really, bounce over, but something like that. Blackouts. There was a blackout in 2003. 4 states blacked out because the grid that we have is old. And the grid, I think, originated in Michigan, and it took out 4 states. Radiological events, you could have a 3 Mile Island, like what I showed you before. Hazmat event, you can have a spill, fires, wildfires out west. Perfect example. If I ever get this right. Weapons of mass destruction, we're talking about those nuclear, radiological, biological, chemical, and IED. You will get a handout on this one. A dirty bomb is different than a nuclear weapon. A nuclear weapon is mass. Dirty bomb is really controlled by distance and how far the fallout and materials will travel. Biological, anthrax, chemical, poisons, pesticides, and IEDs, also called um, incendiary. You will also get another handout on this because really the acronym you'd want to know is something called Be Nice, and we'll work on that one. National security directives to build and maintain an effective national cyberspace and critical infrastructure. The critical infrastructure are those things within your country that are located, those things that are very important. Um, your your electrical grid, your nuclear facilities. You could actually have a company going down and it affects thousands of people. What if Target gets hacked? What if Walmart get hacked? Those type of things. Those infrastructure things are very important. I don't think many people have it down that how important it is not to be hacked. Um, Hacking is more prevalent now than when everything first started. And I think it's more prevalent now because the sophistication of the people on the other end. And when I say that, I mean the sophistication with things like the dark web, also called black web, but I've always known it as the dark web, those type of things. And I tell you another thing that's really good to prevent stuff like that. I know that they shill and send you out like spam emails and everything, but a good thing to get would be something like a I guess it's Equifax. All three credit bureaus do it, but you can get a dark web scan for like $4.95. And what that does is it shows if your name has ever come across it. You know it's there. It's just a little bit harder to police. That's all. Computer emergency response. A cyber threat sometimes, and depending on who it happens to. And by the way, yeah, okay, I get it. 2016, I know. All right, but we'll go over this more in depth later. 2016, I get it. I know, and it happens. But um, I don't really think that hacking. There's different types of hacking, and we'll get into that because you really do need to know it. All right. Um, it could be spear phishing. It could be regular phishing. Spear phishing means where you know where you want to go and you're going to throw that target right there at this particular individual to get whatever you can get out of it. Or it could be regular phishing, cast a line, see what they do. This is why they tell you never, when somebody calls you, don't change your password over the phone, those type of things. Okay, and it's real. Private security. We already know private security is another huge industry in this country. You can make a killing in private security. Okay. But private security works hand in hand with the federal government. If you're a federal contractor, you work for the federal government, it can actually be very beneficial to you. You can do the jobs that the government might, you know what, we don't really want people doing this job. Let's contract it out. And then that's how it happens. Impact of policy. We're going to get into policy more when we talk a little bit later of things like the Stafford Act, EMAC, those type of things. And you will also be getting a handout on that as well. What we want to talk about is like home and abroad, the transnational crime. Transnational crime has a lot to do with protecting our homeland. I think the number one thing that we've been looking at for the last 10, 15 years is money laundering. The slides will come to it in a minute. But money laundering is a really, really simple thing. All you do is wash money. It's the process of taking dirty money and washing it and making it clean. You could be the biggest drug dealer in the world, but and not have a job, but people want to know, how did you get that money? You might open up a shoe store. You might open up a barbershop, or not a barbershop, but you know what I mean, shoe store, some other sort of legitimate business to make yourself seem legit. Okay. Um, you might open a store where you sell little things out like, candy and stuff, but you got to make your money clean. So this way, if somebody says, well, where'd you get all this money? Instead of it being drug money and being seized, well, I made my money in this business right here, that kind of thing. So that's a little bit tougher as well. Transnational crime, there's really no definition or consensus. Transnational crime to allow for a broader interpretation to cover emerging forms of legal activity. Those are crimes that occur outside the United States. And by the way, the United States for years, even back in the early 1900s, had a law that you had to, wherever you went, you were still a citizen, and some laws that covered you here might not necessarily cover you somewhere else. So that's another interpretation of that. Transnational group is three or more persons that was not randomly formed. In other words, they're really nothing but a crime syndicate. This is how you get the Al Qaeda's, and that's something else that I want you to know. Al Qaeda is it's ran almost like a business. You have the money side, you have the operation side, you have the side that carries out the orders. So once you have those three sides, it's a business. That's all it is. It's it's like a big RICO. It's a racketeering because they get their money from sources that most people don't know. They take their money, they get the operational modes, and then they get their people. Now, how it normally works, they usually get the money first. And when I say they get the money first, they get the money first, and then the target aligns with the money. And then now you have your people. Okay. We have X amount of dollars. We can't really do nothing spectacular. Let's do this. And we have these people to carry this out. And everything just meshes. And by the way, something like Al Qaeda is really what they call like a wheel conspiracy. In other words, they're all centered around that one hub, the guy in the middle. But the guy in the middle never lets everybody else knows what's going on, and that's very successful because people don't talk. Because if you don't, if I'm in the wheel conspiracy with you, I know what I got to do. I don't have any idea what you have to do, and there's a difference. So it's very successful. And the difference between organized crime and terrorism is one thing: money. Organized crime wants money and they need money. Terrorism, they use money to get to a religious end or to a propagandist end. In other words, this is what they want. Okay, they can care really less about the money as long as the jihad keeps going. And as you can see right here, there's a lot. Cocaine, heroin. Afghanistan is flooded with heroin. A poppy seed uh, explosion. But as you can see, all the way down, cocaine in North America, counterfeit goods, the things you see at the flea market. You know, you're going to buy a Timberland and it really says Emberland, that kind of thing. Or the shirt you buy, you know, it's a knockoff. So you traffic in persons, you traffic in smuggling, child porn. There's a lot of things that can be trafficked outside of the United States that impact us deeply. Okay. Transorganized crime. It doesn't really matter your, I would guess your social standing. Okay, it takes a toll on legitimate businesses by diverting income and displaces legal commerce. In other words, it ruins your economy. Okay, and I hear people talk all the time, and I've had students tell me, "Well, come on, Mr. Barker, you're worried about me downloading a bootleg." Well, yeah. Okay, well, you're worried about me doing that. I could download this. Yes, but eventually, or they'll tell me, "Well, that actor's not going to miss this." Yes, but eventually, once you start downloading that stuff, what's going to happen is it's going to come back and it's going to come back through, and you'll notice that prices are going to start getting higher. Oh, I can go into a movie theater and bootleg a movie. Okay, but when the price of that popcorn goes up another dollar, now you're going to wonder why. There's really no jurisdiction. It's tough because what happens in one state or one country, it's hard. This is why if you see certain crimes that happen overseas, and some people we can never find them. And don't flip out on me when I say this, but if you go to Mexico and you're a Mexican national, it's going to be tough to find you. Okay, our extradition treaty with Mexico is very spotty, very garbled. Um, we don't really understand what's going on, but this is what winds up happening. The structure of national transnational crime is almost like a pyramid scheme in reverse. Um, it's like it's far more than a crime. All right, it's a very tough situation, but it's a pyramid based structure. It's like organized crime. Okay, everything comes from the top and works down. You have the head terrorist, you have the mafia boss, boom, and everything falls down from them. Now, transnational crime and terrorism. Make sure you read that over. And globalization. The thing that makes transnational crime worse now is because we're all connected. We're all connected by the internet, by your phone. You can pull up a website that belongs in China. I remember the other day, I pulled up a website that had a webcam, a live stream of I think it was Beijing University. You can see people walking in, walking out. Um, but that's real time. So when I was a kid, and I'm not dating myself, but when I was a kid, we never had anything like that. We had pictures and books, of course, and other stuff. I'm not saying also all we had was pictures and books, and we had to carve our papers into stone or anything, but that's all we had. Now everybody's more together. That globalization has brought everyone together. Ever since 2000 till now, you got to remember when the internet was first born back in 2000. I think it had 90 web pages. 90. Now you have millions. So you see how quick that has really turned around in 20 years. Make sure you read this over about globalization. I'll definitely go um, over that as well. It just goes over some transnational groups, some certain definitions. Japan, China has certain groups. United States, we have splinter groups. We have all that as well. So we're not any different. Drug trade, I went over that just a little while ago. Heroin and cocaine, very big. Heroin and cocaine is huge. Poppy seeds grow in Afghanistan. Their largest export, even though Afghanistan exports that illegal drug, that props up their economy. And the average yearly take home of someone in Afghanistan is about $500. So you can see why doing or transporting drugs or being a mule might work. The interactions between international criminal and terrorists to commit crime or terrorism for their mutual benefit, and they do. And as you can see, excuse me, assassination or murder, exploiting underground markets, and drug and human trafficking. And we get through some of the thing. Hezbollah and Chinese crime, the Chechens in Russia, the National Liberation Party of Colombia, the Medellin drug cartel, the Grey Wolves of Turkey, Kurdish Worker Party. It's all over the world. It's not specific to one region or one geography. It is here, and it's all over. Tri-border area. Let me go here. If you see, there's a spot in South America where the tri-border region is where three countries come together and they meet really like in a pinnacle or a pyramid. For many years, they thought that this would be because it's mountainous that it would be a training for terrorism, but it really turned out not to be. What this is, it's just really simple. A place where you can go and get refuge if you commit these kind of crimes. And like I said, when these crimes are committed, it's better for them to run south of the border than go anywhere else in the world. The United States have a long reach, but that reach has a little bit of a problem, especially in a place like this. Now, that tri-border region, 20 to 60,000 ethnic Arabs. Yeah, Arabs. It's known Middle East terrorist groups live there. Hamas, Al Qaeda, Hezbollah, Al Jihad, Islam Aliyah, those type of places. Those type of groups. Those groups are dangerous, and once again, this is why this was always thought to be an area of concern. As of yet, it hasn't borne any fruit. But once again, it's one of those things you have to watch. Okay, and it also has cells there as well. Let's see, and the one you might want to be careful with this one, Venezuela. Venezuela it has a rich history of being fraught with crime, fraught with a failed government, a failed state. When you have a failed state does profit in transnational crime. Perfect example. Years ago, when North Korea had the technology but really couldn't deliver a missile, they used to sell arms, and they still do. Um, what they were so scared about was them becoming a nuclear Walmart. I didn't really want to use Walmart as an example, but a nuclear Walmart that anybody could come in and buy something from them. Uh, and that's pretty much what wound up happening. A couple countries started to buy arms from them, excuse me, and then the United States shut that down real quick, along with, believe it or not, of all people, China, because China didn't want an issue on their back doorstep, because they prop up North Korea and gives North Korea most of their electric. So, when you have a failed state or a hermit state like that, those are the things that wind up happening. Failed states we were talking about. Let's see. Okay. All right. Now, that's it for this lecture. I will post your study guide for your vocabulary, and I will also post a case study where I'm going over and I'm going to circle out certain things I want you to find. Okay. But as far as this goes, this is it for this one. Thank you, and get to work. If you need anything, by all means, please contact me. So, other than that, we're good. Take care and have a good day.